Welcome, Karina, to the Girlfriend Doctor Show. This episode has been a work in progress, long time coming. I've been so looking forward to talking with you. Well, welcome. How are you doing today?
Thank you. And I've been excited too. I'm doing great. And I enjoyed our conversation on my podcast. And now to be interviewed by you, I look forward to this.
Well, and you are in the midst of a very busy time. You're on your book tour, you're doing, so I would love for you to introduce your new book to us.
Yeah. So it's my third book, which is already out, which is The Big Silence. It's a memoir about growing up with a mentally ill mother. And I touch on just being a child, how that affected me, how that sent me through my decade of darkness, how fitness helped me overcome that darkness and helped me heal, and just the journey of it all. And my goal of sharing, it took me 5 years to write the book. And my goal of that, it was number one, selfishly, it was a journaling process for me to release trauma. And then also, I love to help people feel like they're not alone. And then, yeah, yesterday, the audiobook just came out, which I read myself. And that took a while to do because you relive those those moments. But yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is so true. When I read my audiobook for the Hormone Fix and telling my story and parts of my story, it's that emotional. There's so much emotion that comes into that. And it takes a lot out of you. So I applaud you for doing this and doing this work. I know it's helping.
Bless you.
I have good editors. Okay.
I know.
I know it's helping so many people. So I would love for you to share your story. Like what you know, brought you on this journey from a young girl experiencing a mother with mental illness. I would love for you to share that with us.
Gosh. Um, yeah. So I was born in Peru, Indiana. It's a very small town in the Midwest, and lived a very happy childhood up until about 6, 7 years old. Eventually, my family moved to Indianapolis, which was a bigger town. And my mother, you know, things started shifting in the house. My mother started showing some weird signs. Her personality was changing. The short story of it is, I could talk forever about this. Um, but certain things where I wasn't allowed to listen to music, I wasn't allowed to wear images. She was an artist. She destroyed all of her art, couldn't watch TV. She became very paranoid, paranoid towards my father, and delusions about him. And then she started disappearing from the house for days or months at a time. And as at this point, like a 10, 11-year old, I didn't understand why mom would abandon me. And many times she would be a missing person. Police would find her. And eventually we found out that she was one of the longest Jane Does in a mental health hospital. And we finally got to go visit her, and she was on all sorts of medications. And the doctor said, your mom has paranoid schizophrenia. And I'm very young at this time, and nobody was talking about mental health or mental illness. And it was a massive stigma back then. We're trying to erase the stigma now, but there's a lot of work to be done. But I literally, as a kid, had to go to the library and figure out, number one, how do you spell schizophrenia?
Yeah.
And number two, I just read a book to educate myself at such a young age on what this is and what's going on with my mom. So I felt very alone and isolated and didn't want to talk to any of my friends or therapists or anything at the time because I was ashamed of what was going on in my household, in those walls. And the arguments between my mom and my dad, her leaving all the time, it was just complete chaos. So I turned into what I called my decade of darkness, which included um, drinking and drugging, smoking at a young age, anything to escape, skipping school. Um, I am a teenage suicide survivor, which I'm very happy to be here to be able to help save other lives. But In short, if we jump ahead after that decade, in my early 20s, I ended up in LA where I lived for 20 years. But I ended up there because a private investigator found my mom there. And little Karina's like, I can go to LA and bring mom home. Wasn't going to work. She was homeless again. I realized I couldn't bring her back, but I fell in love with the ocean. And I moved there, had a few rough years, but then finally after a 3-day bender, I had this like aha moment, which I think if you listen to yourself and you have that feeling and you actually listen to it and actually do something with it, I realized, Karina, this is not who you're meant to be. You are not your mother. You will not be your mother. You are not, because I had this fear that I was going to have a mental illness as well. And when I realized that my mind was there and I could shift, that's when I made the shift. And I thought, when was I my happiest? When I was very young, I ran a half marathon. And so I signed up for a triathlon. I got back into fitness, and fitness became my therapy.
That's powerful. That's powerful. I'm wondering, as you talk about that moment where you had that aha moment, is that the big silence? Because your platform is the big silence, and I'm wondering where did that well, I'm curious, where did the title The Big Silence come from?
Yeah, I thought about it for a while and I had about 30 different brainstorm ideas. And that stuck with me because the big silence is all the things that you don't want to, that people don't talk about and that they're hiding behind. And so
Mhm.
it's all about breaking the big silence and
Uh,
opening up the conversations.
and that really that trusting that inner small voice within us, trusting that inner knowing, like, okay, this isn't who you're meant to be. This isn't how you're meant to live your life. You're not destined to experience what your mom experienced. And
Yeah.
that,
And when you realize that and you act on that, and I always say it's harder to stay complacent and not make a change. Or I'm sorry, it's easier to stay complacent.
say,
I
wait,
was like, you're like, no, it's easy to stay complacent and not make a change. It's harder to take those steps to improve your life and believe in yourself. I mean, I had very low self confidence. I didn't believe in love because my mother had betrayed me in love, or that's what I believed as a kid. So it's a tough process, but it's so worth it on the other side.
then talk about the steps that helped you reclaim your inner self love and self confidence. Like this has been the a step first was that into that fitness journey, which is like, it sounds like it was a meditation for you, just getting out and
Mhm.
running and biking and swimming, triathlons. Oh my gosh. Run, bike, swim.
Don't I don't do triathlons anymore. Hurts my hips. But I work out, and I work out for my mental health and not
Mhm.
necessarily the aesthetic. And I encourage everyone to just find that moment in the morning where you can move your body. Um, so the steps, yeah, number one, I didn't believe in myself. So I think when you don't believe in yourself and believe that you can achieve anything, you have to challenge yourself. And it was once I challenged myself and I followed through with that challenge, a triathlon. Then when I crossed that finish line, it gave me that confidence. I'm like, I just did that. What can I do next? What more can I do? How can I keep going? And so that was the first step. So I think anyone listening, like a challenge could be anything: making a painting, going for a walk, signing up for a 5K, like anything that is a challenge for you, where you feel stuck, and just doing it, even if you don't want to do it.
Mm. I like that. I think I challenge myself to my walk around the lake today. I mean, like little micro challenges too. Hey, we've got that.
Mm.
But the
Yeah.
small wins, it's the small wins that gradually build confidence and then being able to celebrate that wins. Now, how did you, like, a lot of times with trauma, there's that lack of pause to celebrate yourself
Mhm.
and to celebrate your wins. How are you doing that? How did you learn to do that?
I mean, I could still be learning and,
Yeah, me
the ebbs
too.
and
Me
flows
too.
of life and, the different phases of your life. I I had to trust in myself and believe in myself. How do you do that? Setting those goals, micro
Mhm,
wins, going to
mhm,
therapy, um, making sure I'm taking care of my body, nutrition, hydration, just it's all these little steps. I read so many self-help books, listen to great podcasts, surround yourself with people who are positive and a good influence for you.
yeah.
It's just all the little micro wins.
And scientifically proven is that women who have adverse childhood experiences and women who've had trauma or PTSD, veterans of foreign wars, etc. But certainly the adverse childhood experience is associated with a worsening and earlier transition in perimenopause and menopause. And so that's also
Mhm.
something that's affected you.
Mhm.
There's that um, environmental and epigenetic component that drove you into early menopause. I mean, you're in your mid 40s now, and I would love for you to talk about
Yeah,
that
and I
experience. Did you know, like, did you worry that it was mental illness coming your way? Did you worry that?
well, there were a few worries. Number one, I thought I was because I was with my menstrual cycle. It was full moon on point. I'm like, I would wake up and ask my husband, I'm like, was it a full moon last night? And he's like, oh, it's time. And so I was so constant. And then it was like every 3 months and then a year. And, I went to my doctor and she's like, oh, you're fine. And she's like, you're just stressed. And I thought then I was just stressed because I was at the time, there was a lot going on with being a caretaker for my mom and just lifestyle, just a lot going on. And then her passing away. But then realized I was also taking those symptoms thinking they were stress because there wasn't a lot of education. I was 37 at the time to about 41 where I was in Perry. And I took those symptoms of insomnia, night sweats, brain fog. There were times when my husband was like, "Are you okay? You're not remembering things and you have a really sharp mind." And I was like, "No, I think I'm just stressed." And then you start doing research and having conversations with doctors like you, and you realize, oh my gosh, I was going through perimenopause all this time. And it was such a weird time. It was also during 2020, and I just thought it was all these compounding things. And then I did research and found that, yeah, women who have experienced trauma do have earlier menopause. So I'm happy to find out that there was a reason I was going through this. And now I can also talk to my friends about it and who they're moving into it. I'm like, yep, you're going through it. It's
You're
okay.
going through it. And when you add on that drinking, right? Stress is the hormone associated with stress predominantly is cortisol. And
Uh-huh.
so cortisol is made from progesterone, that reproductive hormone, that hormone that helps our menstrual cycles. And so when we're pressing that gas pedal of cortisol, we're depleting progesterone that much more. It's like, our bucket of progesterone's got holes all the way through it. Every stress trigger, um, every aspect of that is it really contributes to those worsening perimenopause symptoms.
Yeah, and then the other symptom I didn't mention was, I mean, I work out, I know how to eat right, and I was gaining up to 40 pounds, and like, what is happening? And the menopause belly, it's like I was like in this just lost moment, and now I understand it, and I wish I knew it at the time because it would have reduced a lot more cortisol.
Yeah, it would have reduced night weight. There's so much grace in that, and when we
Yeah.
know that there's something we can do, right? And I always say it takes more than hormones to fix our hormones, but then when we need hormones, we need to get them on board. And so this aspect of the added stress. So you've got, there's physical stress, emotional stress, work stress. I mean, right? We're there, especially in our, mid 30s through 50s. There's so many extra, I think, hats that we wear. We've put on ourselves. I'm so happy to have reduced half my hat closet at this point. I'm like, nope. If it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. So let's take that hat off. But
Yeah.
for the ones we can. Now, during this time, like, how much did you understand about the mental um, health consequences of perimenopause? Because it is still not spoken about.
Right. And so your question you were asking, was I worried about that? Because there are a lot of times, usually a mental illness will occur, in your 20s, late teens and 20s. But there are studies that show when women change hormones around peri that they have effects on their mental health. And I do see that. My anxiety, I started having more anxiety, which I have to manage. Um, I know that a lot of depression can kick in. I was, there's always the thought of, oh, well, my hormones change so much that schizophrenia could come on late. So yeah, which then causes anxiety. So, it's really how you can manage it. And for me, it's just making sure I get up, I work out, I meditate, I connect with community. And even on the days when you don't feel like it, you just do it.
Those are all oxytocin increasing behaviors. That's right. Meditation, connecting with community, doing things you enjoy, all those. And that's, I always say, that's the most powerful hormone in our body. If we can empower oxytocin, all these other things start to get better.
Yeah.
So, with that, you said anxiety, like you had to manage your anxiety and the depression. And these practices, these daily practices you put into play to do that. How has that now like thinking of other women in perimenopause and menopause as they're going through this journey, this hormonal anxiety, depression that's associated with these hormonal fluctuations? What is like your kind of prescriptive recommendation? And you said what you're doing is that getting up and
Yeah. Um, and I will say that when I was going through that, when I didn't know I was going through peri, I gave up. I was gaining weight. I was like, why am I even working out? I lost motivation. I was going through, as we know, as we get older, more responsibilities, all of this. It's just too much, where I went through a phase of, I give up. But then my prescription is, I reached out to people and I made workout dates, coffee dates. I made my husband keep me accountable. And then in the morning, when he's like, time to get up, work out, I would get mad at him. I'm like, leave me alone. But it was good. And I got over that slump and worked through it. I think accountability and reaching out to people, and hopefully everybody has like two or three people that they can call on and say, hey, I need a little help right now. Can you be there for me? Um, I realize for some people, you know, they don't have that. I know for my mother, she did not have people in her life aside from me, which, is bad for your mental health. Um, but yeah, I would say toolbox is accountability, community, get up, move, even if it's for 10 minutes. Like this morning, I started my day at 6 a.m., recording meditations for my app and doing everything. And I only had 10 minutes to move my body. I was like, just get up and do it. And so
the discipline,
it's discipline. Yeah.
practice, habit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the non negotiables.
Yeah.
It becomes a non negotiable.
Yeah. And then if you don't feel like even doing 10 minutes, if you promise yourself for 10 minutes, if you have the time, most likely it's going to turn into 20 or 30.
Yeah.
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 Now, one of the things that also part of your history and family history, so your maternal side, and looking at the maternal lineage with that, the mental illness, that aspect, and then also the generational trauma or epigenetic trauma in your paternal lineage. I would like to talk about that because you shared with me as we were talking that your grandparents came from the Ukraine,
Mhm.
and then the war on Ukraine must have been very triggering too. And from my perspective, my mom's Palestinian. She was
Yeah.
Palestinian, and the war on Palestine very, very triggering. And so have all those PTSD things started coming back, and I really had to lean in to those non-negotiables for my mental health, physical health, etc. So I would like you to speak about that because I know you write about this and have talked about this.
Yeah, there's an entire chapter in my book or the audiobook talking about my babushka and my Jid moving and immigrating from the Ukraine in 1950 and being in camps and uh, being held at gunpoint, almost my grandfather losing his life while my grandma was pregnant with my dad, and all that they had to go through. And then thinking about my dad in the womb going through this, and you know, because he was then first generation like you are. So his with the Ukraine, he's just been riled up, riled up. Um, and then I feel it too, but I see it mostly in my dad just being able to feel that pain and that generational pain. And um, you know, I'm proud to be here and be Ukrainian and dealing with that. It goes back to this is what my dad needs to do: meditate more, keep going, watch less of the news, which spikes your
Totally.
cortisol. Like,
Totally. No
I
news in this house. Forget it.
no, I know. I my husband loves to turn on the news in the morning when I want to meditate. I'm like, can we not have death and destruction when we first wake up?
Please, please.
Like we cannot in this moment change what's happening ourselves. Can we have a moment of where do we find peace? What can we do to find peace in this moment and then move through the day? Um, but yeah, you know, eh, yeah. I mean, for you, how have you managed everything?
It is those leaning into those oxytocin principles, being
Yeah,
really good with myself, and like our family motto is just keep showing up with love, keep
yeah,
showing up with love and compassion
that's
and grace, and just keep showing up. And it's challenging. It is certainly, you can meet challenging people in your life, but you recognize that learning, look, they're like if I'm being triggered, that's my work. I need to deal with it and just keep showing up with love and transmute that energy into something positive.
yeah. I mean, love always wins. So if you can carry that energy and share it with one person and then they feel that love and they can share it, then maybe we can eventually make a difference.
Yeah. And I'm curious, like old country, like a lot of what I integrated into my modern medical practice was old country medicine, right? Food is medicine. Food is medicine. That is so big. Community, celebrating each other. I mean, those, faith, spiritual practices, like all those things are like the old country practices that, are integrated into my life. And I'm wondering for your Ukrainian family, were there any old country practices that you've integrated into your life or thoughts or examples?
Hmm. From my Ukrainian side, my babushka loved to cook, and I love to cook. And I see now that that was probably her therapy to be in the kitchen and then have family over and laughing. So I would see that laughter. I remember going to my grandparents' house and everyone was just always laughing and having a good time and socializing. Um, and I think I would carry that. And I remember because the kids would always sit in a separate room and I would always hear the adults laughing and I would always be like, oh, they sound like they're having fun. So I want to bring that laughter and over meals that are good and healthy.
Yes, I think that's such a, I mean, that's such a key. Of course, laughter increases oxytocin. There's my thing again. But that's what I've noticed too in the war torn cultures that I've studied is the cultivation of laughter, humor, and then witnessing that, like, okay, grandparents went through tremendous trauma, but
Mhm.
being able to have that laughter, that community, that fun, and for me, you know, the traumas that I've experienced in my life, it's like, okay, to not bring them into my present moment, right?
Mhm.
And to continue to do and cultivate the things and to recognize that we are worthy of laughter. We are worthy to be happy. Happiness is our birthright despite the circumstances. And
Mhm.
so I think certainly that's been a key aspect of what I practice. I try to practice in my life, sometimes better than others. It's still a practice,
Yeah.
like medicine is a practice. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
but to bring that into my life, but also to really to cultivate that into others, into the different work that I do, to bring in a sense of humor, to bring in fun, to open up those passageways to grace, and humor is a great way to open up communication.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a key aspect. Another thing that you were talking about is the effect of you became your mom's caregiver.
Mhm.
That has to be tremendously
Mhm.
challenging, and was it healing also? What can you talk about that experience, and how have you grieved now? Like, how are you grieving, or have you grieved?
Yeah, so there was a time where my mom was obviously she's been in and out of my life. And then one day she had been out of my life for about 6 months, wouldn't return my calls or anything. And I get a message from a friend that she's in the hospital in Seattle and she had a stroke. And so I would fly up there every weekend. I eventually moved her to California, got her all of the best doctors. At the time, the doctors said she had 2 weeks to live. I changed her diet. I got her moving. I got her health care. And she lived 5 years. Um, and so if you talk about grief for me, little Karina was like, Mom's back. I'm going to be here with her and I'm going to have a mom. Didn't happen. I went into therapy with her and we did it individually with the same psychologist. And, the psychologist privately told me, your mom is also a narcissist and she will never be able to love you the way that you want to be loved. So you need to let that go. And so that's another grief and I'm just pouring my heart into taking care of her, keeping her alive, just a characteristic that I had. Um, and then once she passed, and I was with her the last 3 days of her life in hospice, you become a little lost because I put so much of my identity into her. And for 30 years of her illness, she was what I identified with. And so then, and at the last part of my book is like, now the healing begins. And the grieving process was hard. And I started grief therapy then. And I learned that year one, you're kind of just handling and managing things and grieving. Year two is harder. And that's true. And then year three, you start to release. And so I'm in year three,
Mhm.
releasing the grief, recognizing it, giving it a name, and knowing it's okay, but starting to really heal myself and give myself permission to be happy, to get
Yes.
that oxytocin, realizing that you deserve it. And now this time is for you.
And the challenge of having, like, that little girl Karina wanting that relationship with the mother, never having the relationship you wanted with your mother. Like, there's grieving around that. Like, how, I want to understand that a little bit more.
In terms of the grieving that you never had that mother that you wanted.
Yeah.
A
And
lot
I'm
of
thinking
inner child
about
work.
that. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
gonna say I'm gonna think about that because in the context of, like, we were recording this before Mother's Day, it'll be released after
Mhm,
Mother's Day, but I've been writing a lot about, from my perspective as being a mom without a mom right n my mom passed away too, and then Mother's Day is always a trigger, but also having lost my son, then
mhm,
that's a trigger, and, I mean, there's the aspects of it, and patients that have miscarriages and those that didn't have the relationship with the mother they wanted, or those that didn't have too, the children that they maybe wanted or chose not to have. And then in this Mother's Day, there's so many
mhm.
emotions that come up around that specifically. So I know, like, you're a deep thinker. You've thought that you've been thinking about this, working through this. I'm curious how you've handled it and what advice you give to others in the same situation.
Yeah, I used to get very triggered by Mother's Day because if you go on social media, it's all, "My mom, I love you, this, and I love being a mother," and, um, I've chosen, as we've discussed, I've chosen to not be a mother, aside from my 7 Pomeranians. But, um, but
And mentoring a community, I like a
yes, I
mom
am.
to a huge community.
That is true. I am a mother in ways to people. I take care of a lot of people in a different way than a maternal mother, but I believe our society is getting better at recognizing the different types of mothers these days, the mothers who have lost children, the mothers who are the children who are grieving mothers. Just motherhood is such a bigger term now, and I think that's such an important thing to get out there is you can be a mother in so many ways.
Mhm, mhm,
And to recognize, yeah, Mother's Day is not a happy day for everyone.
mhm, mhm. Right. And even when you are a mom and your kids forget that it's Mother's Day, oh, there's a whole nother set of things that can happen there. And
Yeah.
and and so in how do you take care of yourself during that time when there is a trigger until, like, there's a point where we're not where we recognize we're not triggered by it and it's such a release. We're in neutrality.
Yeah.
And it's taken me it's continues to be a work in progress to be in neutrality, but I'm working on it.
Yeah. I think I've hit the neutrality point now and recognizing, but I do love to recognize every type of mother, and I will on Mother's Day recognize all types of mothers and how all types of situations that we've had. To hit neutrality, it's back to yourself. Like, how are you taking care of you? How are you managing your thoughts? Um, and whether it's through meditation or prayer, just managing and not being that victim mentality that can be so easy, but trying to think more of what am I grateful for, because I even have changed the story of being a victim of my mom's illness to, and I even told her this right before she passed, because she was like talking about regret, I regret this, I wasn't there for you, and I said, Mom, don't regret it because I love the woman I've become, and I became that woman because of what you had to go through.
Mm,
So it's shifting your perspective and your thoughts on the situation. Can you take that pain and turn it into purpose or find out why you had to go through that and like what you've gone through, like why?
mhm.
And
And I
figuring
say
out.
that things don't happen for a reason, but we make reason out of things that happen. And that's been my thing because, well, maybe things do happen for a reason, but anyway, when we make reason out of things that happen, and I mean we make purpose. We
Mm,
use creative. We can the healing perspective is that using that creative energy to manifest beauty in some way or another, helping others in some way or
yeah,
another, and you certainly are.
yeah. And I want to say one thing on grief too that I learned through losing my mom. I laid on a couch for 3 weeks because that's all I had. And someone came to me and said, "When are you going to get over it?" And I was like, "Mm-mm, I'm going to lay right here until I'm ready to get up and go." Like, allow yourself that time.
It's so critical. I think allowing yourself to grieve regardless, of what we're grieving, but there's so much allowing ourselves to grieve because that's just opening the capacity to love more,
Yeah.
right? Allowing us to feel that. And, and I would say when that grief comes again, to allow it again.
Yeah. Feel it.
And
I love feeling.
yes,
You can feel grief, and then that gives you the opportunity to feel joy.
absolutely. I like to quote the poem by Khalil Gibran in his book The Prophet on joy and sorrow.
Mm.
It's do you know that one, Karina?
Oh, wow.
I'll have to send it to you, but it says the which is a more powerful, joy or sorrow. And Khalil Gibran says in his book The Prophet, it says they are from the same cup. Is it not the fire that burns the pot, the pottery, the same pot that holds the wine, and it's like looking at that, the two sides. So from this deep sorrow we know great joy, from this great joy we know deep sorrow, and it's in everything in between. It's everything in between with that. I'll have to
Yeah, that's
send you
true.
that poem, Khalil Gibran on joy and sorrow from the prophet. It's just that's always been one that I've leaned into over the years, and reminding myself when that sorrow comes up, capacity is expanding.
Yes.
But the principles, and with that said, the principles and practices that you've created and you write about in the big science, and you've built a whole like, fitness company, and you've created healing modality that is very positive and counters. We know fitness and nutrition are keys to helping us prevent mental illness, the use of hormones and adaptogens and herbs and supplements for preventing and healing from mental illness. I would love to for you to talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah. I always my perspective on let me just I don't want to go deep into every type of mental illness, but let's talk about depression.
Okay.
And I'm all for want if you need to be on a medication, totally, but I always want to I'm a big advocate. And are you working out? Are you drinking enough water? Because even dehydration can lead to mental health issues. Are you eating the right foods to nourish you? And do you have a healthy gut? Like all of these things that are just really so important. And although we know this, I think a lot of society doesn't know the importance of even again we talk about community, we talk about getting out in nature, sunlight, all of these
Mhm.
things that are free as well. And just I really encourage people to get up, get outside, get moving, watch what you're eating. I mean, hey, I don't always eat healthy, and that's fine too. But 80%, 85% of the time I do. Um, so I and therapy, I think, you know, is really important. I think when people don't have someone to talk to and talk therapy, you can get stuck in your head with all of your thoughts. It can drive you mad. Um, and also, I'll mention at the Big Silence on my foundation side, we have a therapy for all program. So you can apply for therapy, and we have a network of therapists. And a lot of times, health insurance doesn't cover therapy, and therapy is expensive. So that was really important for me to be able to provide therapy for those who need it.
Yeah, no, that's all those aspects, right? Physical, mental, spiritual, and energetic, right? The capacity of energetic. For me, the energetic medicine is the medicine of the future. I eventually hope to see these light boxes. We walk in and walk out the other side, and we're completely rebalanced and
Yeah.
recalibrated. I'm investing in that. So
We'll see some of that at the biohacking conference.
we
Maybe.
will. We will. We'll both be at Dave Asprey's biohacking conference in Austin at the end of May. So y'all join us. One thing that been in this, been following. I'm I love Mother Mary and following the Marian lineage and Magdalene stories and just the feminine empowerment pieces of that. And in one of the things I read, it said we go from a maiden to mother, or you can say mother or queen, and to I say maiden, mother, magi. So the technically crone, but crone became such a not such a pretty word for women as we gray, etc. And you know that word crone, but the word crone is originally a very powerful female enlightened being, right? So I like to use the word magi because it's an alliteration anyway. So maiden, mother, magi, and that sense that the magic, we have magic within us, this intuition, this ability to connect and intuit and to be aware of our connection to our others around us.
Yeah.
And this stage into now we're both post menopause.
Hmm.
And how are you what are you doing different now? How are you furthering your this mindset around okay being the crone? Okay.
I know. It is a mindset because then it hits you. You're like, oh, okay. I'm my mid 40s now. I was having dinner with a friend last night. I was like, can you? And I've known them since I was 22. I was like, can you believe we're like midlife? And he's like, I know. Look at us. And it's shifting that mentality of I get to be here and realizing we all are aging. And I think there's a great movement right now empowering women and actually talking about menopause. And I love that I'm in that it's being that I get to be in this movement where we actually are starting to get information and not ignored. Uh, but it's a mind shift of, oh my gosh, um, I'm getting old too. Wow, I'm actually getting wiser. And you mentioned it earlier. I now know how to say no to things that I don't want to do. And that's empowering in itself. You've done so much when you're younger of just yes, 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 yes. And now you're like, no, I know who I am now. And that's a hell no or a hell yes. And being okay with that and like learning boundaries and just not caring if you set a boundary and if that person has an issue with it, being confident in yourself. So I believe there's a confidence now that I've experienced, and a lot of women as we get older experience that.
And I'll tell you, okay, here's the positive definition of crone.
Okay.
A woman who is venerated for experience, judgment, and wisdom. A better definition. And so magi adds in the magic to that piece and the intuition. So but and also it is that letting go of things that no longer serve us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And that alignment, then there's a simplicity to it that's really, really lovely.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you being so open and vulnerable and authentic in these conversations and the conversations you're having with your community. And there's so many ways people can connect with you. Can you share those, Karina?
Yeah. So thebigsilence.com has all of our resources and links to the podcast and the books and all of that stuff. Fitness at toneitup.com, and then social media, Karena Dawn.
Karina Dawn. Karina at Karina
It's a
Dawn.
KarenaDawn.com. I got a lot of .coms.
Okay. Creator extraordinaire. And your book. Show us the cover of the book for those that are watching us here.
Yes.
It's just
The Big
so beautiful.
Silence. And the lovely Deepak Chopra did a quote on the cover. So yeah. I
Big
studied
sign.
meditation under him. So
Oh, yes. Amazing. He has that presence of neutrality and grace.
yeah,
Really
definitely.
nice. All right. Thank
Well,
you so much for
Thank you.
being
And
on
I'll
this
see
show
you.
today. I'll
Okay.
see you soon. I'll see you at the biohacking.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching another episode of the Girlfriend Doctor podcast. Check out all the links below for more.